New set. Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to my first official deep dive for the Pathfinder 2e Remaster. Yes, the Kineticist counted as a remaster class. I'm not counting it as the first deep dive for the remaster because it's 3.5 hours long and I don't want to lead new players into a 3.5 hour video. The remaster, it's here, it's in all of our hands as long as you've picked it up, and a lot of the classes have been completely remastered, and every class has been touched in some way. As such, it is my divine, God-given duty by Papa Paizo themselves, no, they don't sponsor this video, I'm being funny, to redo my deep dives for every single class in depth so you know exactly what you're playing. In case you've never seen one of my deep dives before, first off, welcome, happy to have you. You look great, by the way. Second off, the deep dive is the longest video format on my channel because I go in depth into every detail of every class. I'm talking level 1 features, every single feature they gain from levels 1 to 20, and most importantly for a lot of you, I explain every single feat in excruciating detail, as well as give my opinions on them. So if you prefer to have words audibly injected into your brain holes rather than through your eye holes, this way you can also play something like, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 3 in the background while I talk about it, this is the video for you. Also, if you're looking for specific information like a specific feat, you will notice that this video has been divided up into video chapters. 3 distinct portions, the level 1 features, the class features, and of course all of the feats, and every single level of feat has been divided into its own chapter as well. So, with all that out of the way and all of us on the same page, let's talk about the Witch in the Pathfinder 2e Remaster. And yeah, I'm starting with the Witch because I think it's important to cover the classes that have been changed the most, and no class has changed more in the remaster than the Witch. Let's get into it. So your first question when reading PF2 might be, how is a witch different than a wizard? Well, in some ways they're similar. They both cast spells in a similar way and can sometimes have access to the same list of spells, but the way they get that magic is incredibly different in the flavor. Wizards are your arcane nerds who studied and read books and learned how to throw a fireball. A witch, however, signed or agreed to a magical contract with a greater being who has given them access to magic, like throwing fireballs. And for the witch specifically, this contract is agreed upon and upheld by the witch's familiar. The familiar keeps an eye on the witch, is their link to their patron, and as such, the familiar is the conduit through which the magic is granted to the witch. Technically, if you take the familiar away, the witch no longer has magical powers. So it's this cool reliance. The patron relies on the witch to uphold their end of the bargain. The witch relies on the patron to supply them with superpowers. That being said, the witch is an intelligence-based spellcaster, not charisma like some people might have assumed. They're also incredibly squishy, much like their wizard counterpart, with only 6 hit points per level, plus their constitution modifier. They are trained in perception, trained in fortitude saves, trained in reflex saves, and only expert in will saves, meaning, like most spellcasters, the witch starts off incredibly frail. They get trained proficiency in 1 skill determined by their patron, but they do get 3 plus their intelligence modifier in additional skill proficiencies, meaning combining that with your background skill proficiency and maybe even some skill proficiencies from your ancestry, and you could be looking at starting with 10 or more trained proficiencies in skills. So the witch can actually be a pretty decent skill monkey if built that way. Witches are only trained in unarmed strikes and simple weapons, of course, and they are not trained in any armor, meaning they are most comfortable without wearing anything. Yeah, we'll stick with that take. They're trained in the spell attack modifier and spell DC, as well as their class DC. In case you're new to the system, don't worry about the class DC. That's usually only important for martial classes and will rarely come up for spellcasters. At level 1, after ensuring you've added all of your ancestry and background bonuses to your character sheet, don't forget to add your 4 free ability boosts that every class gets. The first choice you're going to want to make with your level 1 witch is who exactly is your deity? Who is granting you your magical powers? Some arcane force, some occult spirit, some primal force, some divine force? Note to self, look up more nouns. Basically, each patron will fall into one of 4 traditions: arcane, occult, primal, or divine, and this will determine which spell list you will be using. If your patron is a primal tradition patron, you will be casting from the primal spell list. That is the same spell list that druids use, meaning witches can technically cast any spell in the game, but once you've selected your patron, you are stuck with that one spell list. You'll also become trained in the associated skill of that tradition. If you're arcane, you get arcana. If it's occult, you get occultism. Primal, nature, divine, religion. Your patron will also determine your starting first witch's lesson, which we'll get to later, and a unique familiar ability only available to witches of that specific patron and no other character in the game. We'll go over all of the unique patrons in a little bit, as well as what a lesson is. Witches are a prepared spellcasting class, meaning you do need to specifically select which spells you will be casting each day. You can prepare 5 cantrips, and fill 2 first-level spell slots per day at level 1. However, the witch does not have a spell book like a wizard, nor can it just take any spell from the list like a druid or cleric. Rather, the witch's familiar knows a specific amount of spells that the witch can prepare each day. Starting at level 1, your familiar knows 10 unique cantrips and 5 unique first level spells from the tradition of your patron. And as I said before, you can only prepare a certain number of those spells. Every time you level up, your familiar learns 2 new spells. They could be of an earlier rank, or if you get access to a new rank of spell, you could get 2 spells from that rank. Additionally, witches can learn spells incredibly easily. If you find a scroll of a spell that appears on your spell list, your familiar can literally spend 1 hour eating that scroll, which then adds that spell to your spell list permanently. Alternatively, you can use the learn a spell activity specifically if there is a second witch available to you or in your party. Witches can actually teach other witches' familiars spells literally by having them teach each other. You have your 2 black cats go on a date, you come back knowing fireball, they got mirror image, super cool. Witch familiars are also very special. I'm not going to go over all of the different rules for familiars, but right at level 1, your witch's special familiar gets 2 additional abilities beyond those of a normal familiar. These can be picked from the list of familiar abilities and master abilities, meaning a level 1 witch's familiar starts with the ability to take 4 of these. Just remember that if your familiar would naturally have some of these, like a bat having flight, that does have to be one of your 4. The familiar can also take another extra ability at levels 6, 12, and 18, meaning without taking any feats or anything, a witch's familiar by level 18 can take 7 abilities. Also, in case your familiar ever dies, because you're a bad babysitter, you don't actually lose your magic instantly. You get to keep all of the spells you prepared during that day's daily preparations. And at the start of the next day's daily preparations, your patron actually grants you a new familiar. It has all the same spells that your last one had, and in a lot of cases, maybe it even is a copy of your last one that remembers how it dies. This is a really fun way that you and your GM can roleplay with each other how losing your familiar affects not only the familiar itself, but also your relationship with your patron. Witches also have access to 2 unique types of spells not available to any other class, and these are their Hex cantrips and Hex spells. These are unique spells that will be granted by your patron. Hex cantrips can be used once per round, as many rounds as you like. They don't consume any resource, they can just only be used once per round. And Hex spells, while a little bit more powerful, use your focus points. You will start with a single focus point and can gain more throughout the game, but casting a Hex spell does consume a focus point. The 2 available Hex spells at level 1 are Patron's Puppet and Phase Familiar. These are both used to move your familiar around the battlefield and protect it from harm, and you get your choice of which one you would like to start with. Patron's Puppet is a free action once per turn that allows you to command your familiar. This grants your familiar 2 actions to do whatever it needs to do, similar to commanding an animal companion. And it is a free action, just remember it costs a focus point. So, great action economy, you're just giving your familiar 2 actions for free, but you are spending a point on it. Phase Familiar is actually a reaction that costs a focus point, and you use it when your familiar is within 60 feet of you and takes damage. As a reaction, your familiar gains 5 resistance to all damage and immunity to precision damage. Simple as that. This is only against the triggering damage, and the resistance does only go up by 1 point every spell rank, meaning even by max level, this is only going to be giving you, I think, 14 resistance against the triggering damage, so at higher levels, your familiar might still get popped in one shot, depending on what hit it, but it's still, especially at low levels, a great way to keep your familiar alive. So, with all of that said, let's go over the 7 different patrons your witch can choose from right at level 1. In case it wasn't obvious by now, your patron is basically your subclass. So think of each of these as a very important choice you're going to make, and a choice you can only make once, unless your GM pulls some shenanigans. Starting off with the Faith's Flamekeeper. This is a divine entity who keeps your inner flame burning. As such, you become trained in religion and you use the divine spell list. You add the command spell to your familiar's spell list, and your familiar gets the unique ability Familiar of Restored Spirit. Whenever you cast one of your hex cantrips, a creature within 15 feet of your familiar gains temporary hit points equal to 2 plus half your level, which even at level 1 will round up to 1, so 3 temporary hit points whenever you use your hex cantrip, which will probably be once per round. These temporary hit points only last until the start of your next turn, but this still means you can give a creature a small shield every single turn, because this even works when you sustain a hex. And finally, Faith's Flamekeeper gives you the Stoke the Heart hex cantrip. For one action, you empower any creature within 30 feet and just give them a +2 status bonus to damage rolls. This lasts until your next turn, but you can sustain it every single turn. So not only are you giving your allies 3 temporary hit points from your familiar, you're also giving someone a flat +2 to damage rolls. And let's be real, you're gonna give it to your fighter because they will always crit and double that. Oh yeah, even in the remaster, the fighter jokes aren't going anywhere. Every 2 spell ranks, the damage bonus goes up by +1, so even at end game, it's only going to be giving +7 damage at level 19, but it's still free damage bonus, which activates your familiar ability, and sustaining hexes is what you want to do. This is a great patron for a support witch. The Divine Spell list has some of the best supporting spells in the game, while not leaving you high and dry with a lack of damaging spells. Faith's Flamekeeper, great option. They're all great options, I'm not going to say that every time. The Inscribed one means your patron is a big fat nerd! I wish I were kidding, your patron is just like the embodiment of knowledge and symbols and runes, and that's hilarious. You become trained in Arcana and cast using the Arcane spell list. Whenever you sustain a hex or cast a hex cantrip, your familiar literally turns into runes and symbols and words and becomes so distracting that it gains the ability to grant flanking to you and your allies as though it could attack. You add the Runic Weapon spell to the list of spells you can cast and gain the Discern Secrets hex cantrip. Discern Secrets for one action lets you pick any creature within 30 feet and allow it to make a Recall Knowledge check, a Seek check, or a Sense Motive check as a free action right when you cast the spell. Additionally, they get a +1 status bonus to that check and to all future checks with it as long as you sustain the spell. This can be sustained for up to 1 minute, but keep in mind that the person you cast it on is immune for 1 minute. This is to keep you from just every turn giving this free action to your ranger every time, because you know they have the most insane perception in the party, so you can either choose to keep them with the +1 status bonus, or every round cast it on a different party member to give them all that free action once per round. And at spell rank 5, which is character level 9, you can target 2 creatures at once with this cantrip, which, keep that in mind, that is 1 action to give 2 free actions. That's incredible. The Resentment patron is the embodiment of, get this, resentment. This is an occult tradition patron, meaning you'll use the occult spell list, and you gain trained proficiency in the occultism skill, and whenever you cast or sustain a hex cantrip, get this, your familiar picks a creature within 15 feet currently suffering from a negative condition and prolongs that condition's duration by an additional round. If you've got somebody who is clumsy 1 for 1 round, and then your turn comes up and you cast a hex cantrip, they are now clumsy 1 for 2 rounds. Next round comes around, you can do this again, and again, and again. There is no cooldown, there is no immunity. As long as you can keep your familiar close enough and keep using hex cantrips, you can keep somebody negatively conditioned permanently. The only exception to this is that it does not prevent conditions from being cured. Things like the sickened condition, which comes with an inherent saving throw to get rid of it, they can still make that fortitude save on their turn by retching to remove it even if the duration was extended. Notably, they add the Enfeeble spell to your spell list, which is a great combo with your familiar's ability, and you gain the Evil Eye Hex cantrip. Yes, I had to read it because I forgot it. Stop looking at my eyes. Evil Eye is absolutely phenomenal. For one action, you choose a creature within 30 feet that you can see to make a will save. If they fail, they're sickened 1. If they crit fail, they're sickened 2. As long as you are sustaining this spell and that creature is within your line of sight, they cannot reduce sickened below sickened 1. And as a reminder, the sickened condition is arguably the strongest condition in the game, as it gives a -1 to all checks and DCs. So as long as they are sickened 1 and you are sustaining this spell, you have effectively de-leveled them 1 level as long as it's active. Insane. Silence and Snow is about all things chilly and slow. As such, it is a natural patron, giving you access to the primal spell list and trained in the nature skill. It does unfortunately have what I think is the least interesting unique familiar ability out of all the patrons, and that is just that whenever you cast or sustain a hex cantrip, a 5-foot burst centered on a corner of your familiar's square becomes difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. That's it. Because this is centered on your familiar's square, this means your familiar's square itself becomes difficult terrain, as well as 3 other 5-foot squares, creating a 10-foot by 10-foot square. Your familiar does get to add Gust of Wind to your list of spells and gains the Clinging Ice hex cantrip. Clinging Ice for 1 action causes a creature within 30 feet to take a reflex save against 1d4 cold damage, and if they fail or critically fail, they take a 5-foot or 10-foot circumstance penalty to their movement speed as long as you sustain the spell. The only thing that improves is 1d4 more damage every spell rank, and overall, this is just not that interesting. If they succeed or greater, there's no reason to sustain the spell, the damage has been done, and remember, you can only cast it once per round. If they fail, being able to slow them down by 5 feet is great because you can sustain it for up to a minute. I suppose that is decent, and this patron's whole vibe is slowing creatures down. But boy, the fact that the damage doesn't even repeat when you sustain the spell is kinda rough. This is 1 action, deal 1d4, maybe slow them down. A lot of the times, this is going to do half of 1d4, which granted, it's a saving throw spell on a single action, so you can't ask for the world. I just wish for a little bit more. If I'm out of breath in this next take, I just remember that it's garbage day. But I wasn't too late. Owning a house sucks. The Spinner of Fate's patron embodies fate itself, or maybe even just ensures fate happens the way it's supposed to. As such, it is an occult tradition patron, which gives you trained in the occultism skill. Now, their familiar ability feels pretty damn good. Whenever you cast or sustain a hex cantrip, a creature within 15 feet of your familiar, either, your choice, gains a +1 bonus to armor class or a -1 status bonus to armor class. I love that you can choose, because in a lot of cases this wouldn't stack. Something like the sickened condition grants a status penalty. So maybe if somebody else already has a creature frightened or sickened and already is inflicting a status penalty, you can say, well, my penalty to them won't be helpful, so I'll just give my ally +1 to armor class. I love that you can do either one. You get to add Sure Strike to your list of spells you can cast, and your hex cantrip from this patron is Nudge Fate. I'm sorry I keep reading, I have a really bad memory. The Nudge Fate cantrip for 1 action just feels like, okay, let's make sure this doesn't go horribly. For 1 action, you choose a creature within 30 feet, and nothing happens right away. You can just sustain this spell up to 1 minute. Now, during that 1 minute, or however long you sustain it, if that creature would ever make a check where a single +1 would turn a crit failure into a normal failure, or a normal failure into a success, that +1 is retroactively added to the roll, and then the spell ends. So if your ally attacks an enemy with 19 armor class and they roll a total of 18, retroactively they get that +1 status bonus and it becomes a success. Just remember, this is a status bonus, so if you have something like a Bard and they're already benefiting from Inspire Courage, which gives a +1 status bonus to attack rolls, this will not stack with that. This can apply to attack rolls, skill checks, and even saving throws, so overall, this is one of the coolest feeling spells ever. I especially love the idea of the first session playing with one of these witches, and you don't actually even know what subclass they are, and they just start casting something, and your ally's like, what's going on? And they're like, don't worry about it. And then like 3 rounds later, they barely miss, and you're like, ha, no you don't. What I love is that there's no immunity. If you want to keep putting this on the same character over and over again, you can. If you want to keep putting it on different people, you can. The only limiting factor is that it just cannot turn a success into a critical success, unfortunately, but maybe that would be a little too strong. The Starless Shadow Patron is about a dark patron who is dark, and when you think about them, all you remember is dark. Because dark. As such, they are of course another occult patron, granting you trained in occultism and spellcasting using the occult spell list. The familiar ability is really cool, but requires a little bit of setup. If your familiar is concealed, hidden, or undetected from a creature within 15 feet of it when you cast or sustain a hex cantrip, that creature becomes frightened 1. I want to say this again, that creature becomes frightened 1, not a saving throw to resist. They just become frightened 1, and frightened is the same as sickened. That is a -1 penalty to all checks and DCs. That means their armor class goes down by 1. That means their attack rolls go down by 1. That means all their saving throws go down by 1. It of course also adds the Fear spell to your list of spells you can cast and grants you the Shroud of Night hex cantrip. Oh, and would you look at that, the hex cantrip perfectly complements the familiar ability. For 1 action, you choose a creature within 30 feet and it makes a will save. On a failure, it treats all bright light as dim light, and unless it specifically has greater dark vision, all creatures, including your familiar, are considered concealed from it. So not only does this enable your familiar ability to just keep them frightened every single turn, but it also means they have an inherent 20% chance to miss all attack rolls as long as you sustain this spell. This spell, absolutely disgusting. It is balanced because they have to fail their saving throw specifically. A normal success, nothing happens. But there's also no immunity to this, so you can just keep doing it every single turn. Yo, I don't know if you can hear that. That's the garbage truck. I made it, y'all. I made it by like 5 minutes. Let's go! The final patron is the Wilding Steward, which is the wild patron about the wilderness. So if you want to be a wild witch who's wild about the wilderness, choose the Wilding Steward, because they are wild about the wild. And obviously they have the nature skill proficiency and cast using the primal spell list. Their familiar ability is super interesting. Whenever you cast or sustain a hex cantrip, your familiar either gains 60 feet of tremor sense or wave sense, and can use the point out action as a free action. So if this is active, they don't know the exact square a creature will be in, but if you're walking through a cave, your familiar can say, hold up, there is a creature within 60 feet of us. I know that for a fact. Interestingly, you get a choice to add to your spell list of either summon animal or summon plant or fungus. You also get the Wilding Word hex cantrip. Wilding Word is a cool self-preservation technique. For 1 action, you pick a creature within 30 feet, and depending on their will saving throw, they become reluctant to hurt you. Additionally, if the target is natural, i.e. an animal, plant, or fungus, they take an inherent -1 circumstance penalty to the saving throw. If the target normal succeeds their saving throw and tries to use a hostile attack roll or skill check on you, they take a -2 penalty to that roll on a normal success. If they fail and they damage you, they become sickened 1 every time. So if they hit you and then retch to get rid of sickened and then hit you again, not only are those attack rolls at -2, but if they hit you, they are sickened. This is absolutely incredible and useful in every single boss fight you're ever gonna have. Oh, you're fighting a dragon? Wilding Word. Even if it's not focused on you, if you get clipped by its breath weapon, guess what? It just damaged you. They're now sickened 1. If they failed the saving throw initially, that's amazing! And if they didn't fail, guess what? Next turn, you don't sustain it, you cast it again. You cast this every single turn until they finally fail, and then just sustain it. And if the boss ever hurts you, even by accident, they're sickened. Incredible. And with that, we have covered all of the level 1 options available to the Witch. There's a lot more to cover. Starting off, of course, with the level 1 to 20 class features. So if you're confused at this point, don't worry, because the next section is very simple. Class features from 1 to 20 might sound like it'll be a lot, but the Witch is a spellcaster, and even here in the PF2 Remaster, most spellcasters' per level class features are super simple. At level 2 and every single even level thereafter, witches get both a new skill feat and a new class feat that they can pick from the witch class feat list. At 3rd level and every 4 levels after, they get a general feat, and also at 3rd level they get to increase a skill proficiency to expert or train a new skill. Like most other classes, they can do this at every odd level. At 5th level and every 4 levels thereafter, they get to pick an ancestry feat from your chosen ancestry's feat list, and their fortitude saves increase to expert. At 7th level, their spell attacks and spell DCs increase to expert proficiency. At 9th level, their reflex saves increase to expert proficiency. At 11th level, their perception checks increase to expert proficiency. And also at 11th level, they gain the weapon expertise, increasing their weapon proficiency to expert proficiency. At level 13, their unarmored proficiency goes up to expert, and they get weapon specialization, which just means if you're attacking with a weapon, you deal a little bit of bonus damage based on your proficiency. You are a witch. This probably means nothing to you. Probably. At level 15, your spell DCs and spell attack roll proficiency increases to master, and at level 17, your will saves increase to master. On top of that, anytime you normal succeed a will save, you critically succeed instead. And finally, at level 19, you get legendary proficiency in spell attack rolls and spell DCs, and more importantly in my opinion, you get a 10th level spell slot. Yeah, that's it. That's all of the class features from 1 to 20. And if you watch any other spellcaster deep dive after this one, you'll see this is usually true. You see, spellcasters, most of what they get is in their spell selection. So aside from basic character progression like saving throws and skill proficiencies, they don't get a whole lot every single level compared to something like a martial class. And so with all of that being said, it's finally time to move on to the witch feats, which you'll be selecting at every single even level every time you reach one. Going from levels 1 to 20, let's cover all the witch feats. While some of these feats are listed as level 1 feats, normally witches cannot take them until 2nd level. Remember, when you do gain a class feat, you can take any feat of that level or lower, but there are some ancestries, such as humans, who can get a bonus starting level 1 class feat. So right at level 1, we have a fan favorite, and that is Cackle. This is a new hex spell, meaning it does cost a focus point to use, but when you use it as a free action at the start of your turn, you sustain a spell. Oh, do you not have enough actions this turn to move, sustain your hex cantrip, and cast a 2-action spell? Well, spend a focus point with Cackle. Now you sustain your hex cantrip for free, spend 1 action moving into position, and then spend your other 2 actions letting loose one of your spell slot spells. Cackle is great if you just need that extra action sometimes, but not all the time. I highly recommend it. It's actually got a problem in that a lot of people think it is mandatory for witches. If you really want to be able to reposition and make the most out of your turns, that you need Cackle. I don't necessarily agree with this. I think it's a great option. I do not think it's a must-have. Do you want to accidentally spill a little bit of the Alchemist class into your Witch class? Then take the Cauldron feat. Right at level 1, you get 4 common first level formulas for any oils and potions. And then at level 4 and every 2 levels after that, you get an additional formula to add to your formula book of any oil or potion of that current character level or lower. So when you hit level 6, you get to add a 6th level oil or potion formula to your book. Also, if you don't want a formula book, you can make your familiar remember them instead. That's funny. Once per day during daily preparations, right while you're preparing your spells, you can also prepare one single oil or potion that you have the formula for. Oh, you think you're gonna need some extra healing today? Boom, level 1 healing potion. Perfect. And you better get used to only making one item per day, because this does not improve until character level 15 when you get your master spellcasting. At that point, you can create 2 items per day, and once you are legendary at level 19, you can create 3 items per day. But don't underestimate the value of this feat. Being able to create a 3 gold cost potion every day at level 1, when you only start with 15 gold, that's great. Counterspell. I'm not going to go into how this works in this video because it's quite complicated, but if you want to know, boom, video of me from 3 years ago. Don't judge how ugly I was. I look a lot better now. Reach spell and widen spell. I usually like to cover these together because they're very similar. Both of these feats are known as spell shapes. You spend one action before you cast the spell to augment it, making it either a longer reach or a wider area. So if it's a 2-action spell normally, you can effectively make it a 3rd action to augment it with the spell shape and then cast the spell. Reach spell increases the range of a cast spell by 30 feet, or if it is a touch spell, it gains a reach of 30 feet. Widen spell increases the size of cone, line, and burst area of effects. It will add 5 feet to the radius of a burst area of effect, however only if the burst is already at least 10 feet. If the burst is a 5-foot radius, you cannot use widen spell to make it bigger. If your line or cone is 15 foot long or shorter, it only adds 5 feet to the reach, but if your cone or line is longer than 15 feet, it adds 10 feet. Witch's Armaments. This feat gives you a body part that becomes a functional weapon, and you get to choose between nails, teeth, or hair. And I absolutely love that I just read that when they describe living hair, they also include beards and mustaches as things that can attack for you. So if you want to be Bobo, have fun. All 3 of these weapons are considered the brawling weapon group. Your nails are a 1d6 slashing attack with the agile and unarmed traits. Your jaws are a 1d8 piercing attack with no traits. And the hair, while it is only a 1d4 bludgeoning, comes with the agile, disarm, finesse, trip, and unarmed traits. Meaning if you can somehow get an item bonus to your hair, which via the hand wraps of Mighty Blows you can, you get to add that bonus to disarm checks and trip checks with your mustache! You only get to choose one of these weapons, but you can take this feat again if you want another one. Those were all the level 1 feats, so now it's time to move on to the level 2 feats. And as we do, it's time for a very big tangent in the form of the basic lesson feat. When you take this feat, you get to pick a basic lesson. What is that? Well, the basic lesson only has 2 effects. It adds a spell to your list of known spells right when you take the feat, and more importantly, it grants you a unique hex spell. There's 5 different lessons to choose from, which means there's 5 different hex spells to go over, so strap in, because we're going to go over all of them right now, starting with the Lesson of Dreams. You add the sleep spell to your list of known spells, and get the Veil of Dreams hex spell. For one action, you cause a creature to become groggy, drowsy, and difficult to focus. They make a will save, and on a normal success, let me reiterate, on a normal success, they take a -1 status penalty to perception checks, will saves, and attack rolls, sustained up to 1 minute. Additionally, if they have to make a will save specifically against a sleep effect, this increases to a -2 penalty. Should they fail their saving throw, they take all the same penalties as a success, but if they ever take an action that has the concentrate trait, like most spells, they have to roll at least a flat 5 or higher on the d20 or lose the action. This is one of the most consistent and reliable spells I've read in a long time, and it couples so well with that sleep spell the lesson adds to your spell list. But remember, this is only one action, so you can Veil of Dreams. They normal succeed their will save, cool. Hit them with a sleep spell, they have a -2 status penalty to their will saving throw. Beautiful combo. With the Lesson of Elements, you get to actually pick one of 4 spells to add to your spell list, and they are Breathe Fire, Gust of Wind, Hydraulic Push, or Pummeling Rubble. And you also got the Elemental Betrayal Hex spell. Elemental Betrayal on its own is okay. If you have a kineticist in your party, it becomes insane. For one action, you choose a target. Then you choose one of the 6 Pathfinder elements, earth, air, water, fire, metal, or wood, and the creature gains weakness 2 to that trait. So, oh, you have a water kineticist in your party? Oh, you're weak to water now. Oh, what's that? Metal kineticist? You want to hit them with your metal shrapnel? Sure, they're weak to metal. Don't ask why it doesn't improve the damage of metal weapons. That's thinking too hard. The upside of this is that there is no saving throw. You choose a creature, it gains that weakness. Fantastic. The problem is the scaling is garbage. This only increases their weakness by 1 point every 2 spell ranks. And remember, you only gain a spell rank every 2 character levels. Meaning at level 5, this increases to 3 weakness, and then at level 9, it increases to 4 weakness. So I'd say from levels 1 to 4, this is pretty good. Maybe 1 to 3. After that, it gets a lot less good, but if you can combine it with something like persistent damage, especially fire, you could get a lot of bonus damage out of this. The Lesson of Life. You add the Spirit Link spell to your list of known spells and get the Life Boost Hex spell. Let me tell you, for one action, Life Boost is phenomenal. For one action, you pick any creature within 30 feet, and they gain Fast Healing 2 for 4 rounds. Fast Healing, in case you're unaware, means at the start of a creature's turn, they gain that many hit points. So Fast Healing 2, they're just gaining 2 hit points per turn for 4 turns, not even sustained. This is just a 4-turn duration. You throw this up, cool, now you can cast a Hex cantrip and start focusing on that. That ally is going to slowly heal on their own. 8 hit points compared to something like a cleric is not that much, but it's still easy, passive hit points that you got to heal guaranteed 8 points for one action. And the fast healing scales pretty dang well, increasing by 2 points every spell rank, meaning right at level 3, this is healing for 16 over 4 rounds. Right at level 5, it's healing for 24 over 4 rounds. This is going to stay relevant the entire game. Lesson of Protection teaches you the Mystic Armor spell and the Blood Ward Hex spell. Blood Ward is a nice little way to give someone a +1 status bonus to armor class, sustained up to 1 minute, but there's a little bit of a caveat. When you cast this, you need to choose a specific type of monster. Animal, beast, aberration, ooze. You can see the list right there on screen. There's a lot. They only get that armor class bonus against those creatures. On the upside, it also boosts saving throws, and at character level 9, this increases to +2. So it's always going to be useful, as long as you are fighting one type of creature, this is great. Against a specific boss, fantastic. You can pick... You can't pick humanoid? You can't pick humanoid? Why, you can pick undead, you can't pick human... Why can't you pick humanoid? The Lesson of Vengeance teaches you Phantom Pain and grants you the Needle of Vengeance Hex spell. Needle of Vengeance is a cool little way to punish an enemy for hurting you or one of your allies. When you cast this, you pick an enemy as well as yourself or one single ally. Oh, what's that? The boss is going mano a mano with the fighter? Cool. Let's use Needle of Vengeance on the enemy and the fighter. Now, every time that enemy takes a hostile action against that fighter, and that's not just dealing damage, a hostile action is anything that would hinder somebody's well-being, they make a basic reflex save against 2 mental damage. Oh, they're attacking 3 times in 1 turn? Doesn't matter if they hit or miss, they're taking the damage every single time. This damage scales by 2 points every spell rank, so over time, sustained up to a minute, that could do a lot of damage. So if you can put this on the right creature and they just keep attacking the same target over and over again, you're gonna rack up free damage easy. And those are the basic lessons. You take this feat at level 2, you can pick any of those lessons, get their associated spell, and hex. Moving on to cantrip expansion. You can prepare 2 additional cantrips per day. It's okay. Conceal spell, another spell shape that for 1 action removes any visible spell casting manifestation from you when you cast your next spell. This is a weird one that relies on a bit of GM discretion because this removes, the mumbling of incantations, the shining in your hands, but it does not remove the fireball being flung out from you. So if someone can see you, Even if they don't see you casting the spell, they still see the fireball leave your hand. So GMs, definitely think about what that looks like in the context of the game, and players realize that Conceal Spell is much more useful for things that just cause something to happen somewhere else, rather than cause something to emit from your character. Enhanced Familiar. Your familiar gets another 2 abilities per day. Remember, a witch by default already gets 4 starting familiar abilities? This bumps you up to 6. Familiar's Language is a cool way to acquire languages that don't even necessarily exist. You can speak to your familiar and any other creature of the same type as your familiar. Oh, your familiar is a cat? You can now talk to cats. If your familiar should ever die or change shape or species for some reason, you do lose this feat for 1 week as you relearn that language. Your cat dies and gets replaced by an otter. Well, now you have to spend a week learning how to speak otter, but then after that, you can speak otter. At level 4, Rites of Convocation is very specific. You pick exactly 1 summon spell. Could be Summon Plant or Fungus, could be Summon Animal, could be Summon Construct. At any time during the day, you can spend 10 minutes to swap any spell you prepared that day out for the chosen summon spell, specifically. If you chose Summon Construct, then at some point you can sit down and you can replace that Magic Missile with Summon Construct, or you can replace that Fireball with Summon Construct. This is a cool way, I guess, if you don't think you're going into combat that day, maybe replace some of your offensive spells with some utility spells or roleplay spells. But then you find out, oh hey, we're gonna go into that troll cave in an hour. Your witch goes, hold up, let me get my warg on the phone. And obviously the spell you trade out does need to match the rank. If you get rid of a 5th rank magic missile, you add in a 5th rank summon animal. But keep in mind, if you're choosing a summon spell that starts at a certain rank, like summon elemental, then you cannot sacrifice spell ranks of lower than the minimum rank of summon elemental. Sympathetic Strike is one of the coolest feats for the witch, at least in the early game. It does require witch's armaments as a prerequisite though, which is a little unfortunate, meaning if you want this at level 4, you need to have specifically taken witch's armaments at level 2, and then this at level 4. You can use Sympathetic Strike once per round for 1 action and attack specifically with your witch's armament, whether it's your nails or your teeth or your hair. If you hit the target, then until the start of your next turn, they take a -1 status penalty to all saving throws against your hexes. If you somehow manage to critically hit, it's a -2 status penalty against your hexes. This is great! So if you just really need them to fail, you can walk up, you can stab them with your mustache, and then cast your hex for that little bit of extra chance that they fail. Just so cool. I love being able to inflict a penalty to saving throws against a specific effect. In this case, it's your hexes. That's great, especially for something like your focus point hexes. You don't want those to fail. So start up with Sympathetic Strike, get them that penalty, and then cast your focus spell. Up to level 6 with Ceremonial Knife, which again, just such a cool freaking feat. You, as a witch, can take a mundane normal knife and make it function as a magic wand. During your daily preparations, you can imbue a spell rank 1 spell into the knife, and while holding the knife, can activate it just like a wand. And also just like a wand, you can activate it again and again by overcharging it with a 50-50 chance of the knife breaking. But what's awesome about this compared to normal wands, a wand gets broken, shoot, now you have to craft a new wand or maybe even spend gold on a new wand. With Ceremonial Knife, you imbue it during your daily preparations. You go to town, you buy 10 knives. Have your fighter or barbarian with crazy carrying capacity hold on to your collection of knives. Every day, you charge it with a 1st rank spell, and if you want to save your spell slots, you can just spam this thing like a cantrip. Oh no, it overcharged and broke, darn. I'll have another one tomorrow. Starting at level 8, you can imbue the knives with 2nd rank spells, and every 2 levels after that, you can increase the rank by 1. And at level 6, already we have Greater Lesson. Y'all ready for more lessons? Sit down, take notes, there will be a test. The Lesson of Mischief gives you the best named spell in the game, Mad Monkeys, as well as the Deceiver's Cloak hex. Deceiver's Cloak is definitely different from other hexes. First off, it costs 2 action to cast, and it can be sustained up to 1 hour. This is just a focus point version of the 3rd rank spell Illusory Disguise. You can make yourself look like a different person of your ancestry, change your clothes, change your hair, change your eyes, but you do still look similar-ish to your original form. At character level 11, once this gets upgraded to 6th rank, then you can change your shape to any other creature of the same size as yourself. So overall, not that exciting. It's just a spell slot spell in the form of a focus spell. The Lesson of Shadow teaches you Chilling Darkness and gives you the Malicious Shadow Hex spell. And Malicious Shadow is okay. For 2 actions, you infect a target shadow with malice, which sounds so cool. But at the end of the day, all this means is that when you cast the spell, and once per round when you sustain the spell, you can make a spell attack roll against that target's armor class. If you hit, the shadow hits them for 1d10 plus your intelligence modifier. And that's all it does. This is a d10 plus spellcasting mod once per round, which contributes to your multiple attack penalty. So you don't want to use this and then another spell with an attack roll, because there will be a penalty on that. The shadow doesn't flank, the shadow can't take any other actions besides strike, and you choose its damage when you cast the spell, bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, and cannot change it once the spell has been cast. Additionally, the shadow can be removed by moving into complete light or complete darkness, and that one doesn't make sense to me. Like, I guess there's the idea that in the dark you technically don't cast a shadow, I guess because there is no light, and without light there is no shadow. I don't know. This feels really, really bad. The damage only increases by 1d10 every 2 spell ranks, meaning at spell ranks 5, 7, and 9. So at character level 8, this is still dealing 1d10 plus 4. I guess maybe if you can combine sustaining this with sustaining a certain hex, maybe you can make it work in a cool way. Maybe I'm missing something with Malicious Shadow. It's a really cool visual for very minimal mechanical results. The Lesson of Snow gives you the Wall of Wind spell to your list of spells you already know, and the Personal Blizzard hex spell. Once again, for a character level 6 effect and ability, especially one that costs a limited focus point, it's not that impressive. For 1 action, a creature makes a Fortitude save. If they critically succeed, nothing happens. If they normal succeed, they take 1d6 cold damage. If they fail, they take 1d6 cold damage and 1d6 persistent cold damage. The creature becomes concealed to all other creatures, and all other creatures become concealed to them, because the blizzard is whipping around just in front of their own face. But a line of text that I don't really like reads as such: the persistent damage automatically ends when the spell ends. Sure, you can sustain it up to 1 minute, but it doesn't say that they don't get their check to end it anyway. You see, when you're taking persistent damage, you have a flat DC 16 check that you can roll at the end of every single one of your turns automatically. If they roll that 16, persistent damage ends. It doesn't say this ignores that rule, meaning even if they fail their saving throw, they might only take 2d6 damage from this. Total. If they crit fail, it can get a lot better, 2d6 damage up front, 2d6 damage every turn, maybe it takes them 2 rounds to get rid of it, that's 6d6 cold damage. Alright, that's something. But that's relying on a lot of things going perfectly, and the scaling is absolute garbage. Every spell rank, the damage goes up by 1. Not 1d6, 1. Meaning at character level 6, this is dealing 1d6. At character level 19, this is dealing 1d6 plus 7. This feels terrible, Sure, it's only 1 action, and some of you might be saying, oh, combine it with Elemental Betrayal, that original lesson. Well, remember, you can only cast 1 hex per round. So you'd have to Elemental Betrayal, wait a round, and then Personal Blizzard. I do not see who this is for. What do you mean? It's definitely not 8 real-life days later when I'm recording the rest of this video. Don't think about it too hard. Steady spellcasting. If another creature would ever disrupt your spellcasting in any way, like with a reactive strike, you actually get a DC 15 flat check to keep your concentration on the spell. I really can't recommend this feat. In all my years playing this game, I've never seen a concentration spell get disrupted, because it's not just on damage in this system. Only very specific abilities, like specific reactive strikes, disrupt concentration actions. So unless you're running into that a lot in your own campaign, maybe skip this one. Even with this feat, it's only a 25% chance you don't get disrupted, instead of automatically succeeding. Witch's Charge is a cool little link up with one of your allies. During your daily preparations, you pick one willing creature, and for the rest of that day, you know what direction that creature is from you, how far away they are from you, and any negative afflictions currently affecting them. On top of that, any spells with a listed range of touch can be cast with a range of 30 feet. Really cool. It's not super powerful, but if you and your ally are having some really cool synergy together, like the Barbarian or the Fighter, this could let you use some touch spells like Heroism from a range of 30 feet, or even a one-action heal spell. There's not a whole lot of touch spells that you might need to do that you can't walk for first, but it might save you a move action. Oh god. I'm dying. Level 8, Incredible Familiar. Your familiar gets 2 more abilities, on top of all the other abilities it's getting per day. Merc Sight is honestly fantastic. Any kind of non-magical fog or precipitation or any natural thing obscuring your vision no longer inflicts a penalty to your ranged attack rolls or perception checks. Additionally, creatures who are concealed from you no longer require a flat check to target them, including your allies. So if for some reason your allies are concealed from you, you can still hit them with a heal spell without rolling the check to target successfully. Very nice. Okay, so I actually just read Spirit Familiar for the first time, and oh my god, what a cool feat! Once per 10 minutes, for 2 actions, your familiar turns into a living spirit bullet. It abandons its physical form and flies out at an enemy within 20 feet, dealing 6d6 spirit damage on a basic will save. Not only that, but then it flies to any ally within 30 feet of that enemy and heals them for half the damage it dealt. You're level 8. If they critically fail, they're taking 12d6. You're looking at least 40-ish damage here. Run over, heal your ally for 20. You just dealt 40, healed 20 for 2 actions. Once per 10 minutes, that's going to be almost every combat. Maybe if you're in a dungeon crawl, every 2 combats. That's amazing. Right at level 9, this goes up to 8d6, and then at every odd level going forward, it goes up by another 2d6 damage. This thing chunks. Though this is only available to Divine or Occult patrons. Arcane and Primal get something similar, though in my opinion not nearly as good. Once per 10 minutes for 2 actions, your familiar becomes a weaving form of raw magic that encompasses a single enemy. Same idea, 6d6 slashing damage on a basic reflex save that increases by 2d6 at level 9 and every odd level thereafter. However, instead of healing an ally for half the damage you dealt, instead it just immobilizes the target. This only lasts for 1 round, or if they make an escape check against your spell DC, and it's only on a failure. The Spirit Familiar still heals even on a normal success, but this one, if they normal succeed their saving throw, you're just dealing half of 66 and nothing else. It's still good, don't get me wrong. This is a 2-action, 6d6 explosion of damage on a target that doesn't use a spell slot or a focus point. That's great, but compared to the Divine Occult Familiar, this one is incredibly lackluster. Witch's Bottle is super flavorful, but a little bit over the top for what it actually does. You can spend a focus point to imbue a potion with the power of 1 hex you can cast. If a creature drinks that potion at any time, they gain the effects of that hex as if you just cast it on them. Obviously, you'll want to use this on a positive effect hex and give it to your allies, unless you can find a way to get your enemy and trick them to drink your negative effect hex potion. If you happen to have the Cackle feat from level 1, you can spend an additional focus point to add it to the hex potion so that when they drink it, it lasts an extra round automatically. Otherwise, the hex will only last 1 round. And even beyond that, you can't refocus the focus point used to create that hex bottle until it has been used. So Overall, you're using a focus point now to give someone a potion, limiting your max focus points at that time until that potion is used, just so they can use it for 2 of their actions to draw and drink it, rather than 2 of your actions just to cast it. I don't really see who this is for, aside from being able to give your ally a really strong hex that you don't need to be in the situation to use. At level 10, Double Double is a direct upgrade to your Cauldron feat, doubling the number of items you can make every single day, starting up at 2 items and then 4 if you're Master Proficiency, and 6 if you are Legendary. 6 free items per day. Pretty damn good. And finally, at level 10, you have the Major Lesson feat, which lets you pick one of 2 major lessons. The Lesson of Death grants you Raise Dead, there's your Summoning Necromancer Witch if you want it, as well as the Curse of Death hex. For 2 actions, a creature makes a Fortitude save to resist the literal curse, the Curse of Death. This is a multi-stage curse. If they succeed their saving throw, they are afflicted by the curse at stage 1, but the curse cannot progress past stage 1. If they fail, they're afflicted by the curse at stage 1, but it can progress, and if they critical fail, they are afflicted by the curse at stage 2, and it can progress. This one's honestly pretty great. Even at stage 1, meaning on a normal success, then the creature takes 4d6 void damage and is fatigued. Then they have to make another saving throw. Like normal, if they succeed, it reduces the stage by 1, fail increases by 1, critical fail increases by 2. Though remember, if they succeeded their original save, it cannot go past this stage. But think about that. If they succeeded their saving throw, they took 4d6. Then they fail the next turn. Sure, it doesn't progress. They still take another 4d6. Also, they're fatigued, which I believe is a -1 status penalty to perception checks and all saving throws. Fact check me on that post. If they critical fail, they're taking 8d6 void damage. On their turn, if they normal fail again, they're going down to stage 3, 12d6 void damage, and if they fail again on the following turn, they die. A crit fail followed by 2 normal fails is death. And this does not have the incapacitation trait. And every single spell rank, the damage of every single stage increases by a d6. That's amazing! The success effect still increases by 1d6. That's nuts! This thing doesn't have like success take half damage. They just suffer the curse. If they can't succeed their saving throw after that and you just keep sustaining this, that is 4d6 damage every single turn. I love this. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Lesson of Renewal, which grants you the Field of Life spell and the Restorative Moment hex spell. Yeah, I'm just reading them off the screen at this point. There's so many, I can't memorize them all. I'm sorry, I'm almost out of space on my recording hard drive. Restorative Moment is pretty cool and could be impactful in some later game fights and dungeons. For 2 actions, a creature immediately reduces any doomed and drained condition they're afflicted by 1 stage. And if you're familiar with doomed and drained, that is hard to come by, removing those effects. Additionally, the target can make a free saving throw against every single individual affliction they are currently suffering from with a duration of 1 day or less. So even if your target is clumsy from something, stupefied from something, frightened from something else, and sickened from a 4th thing, as long as none of those have a duration of greater than 24 hours, they get a free saving throw against all of them. This feat, this focus spell, could come in so clutch. Quicken Casting, once per day as a free action. If your next action is to cast a spell that costs 2 or 3 actions, you can reduce the required number of actions by 1. This cannot reduce their total actions to less than 1, however. So, if you have a 2-action fireball, you can Quicken Casting 1-action fireball and follow it up with another fireball just once per day. Really good. Though the spell does need to be at maximum 2 ranks lower than your highest rank spell. So if you take this at 10th level and you can cast 5th rank spells, you can cast a 3rd rank spell with Quicken Casting. Witch's Communion, a direct upgrade to Witch's Charge. Rather than being limited to 1 creature, you can now target a number of creatures equal to your intelligence modifier, which will probably be your entire party. Coven Spell is a super unique reaction that if an ally within 30 feet casts a spell, you can empower it. If the spell they cast deals damage and does not have a duration, you can add the spell's rank to its damage. So if someone throws out a 5th rank fireball, you can use your reaction to give all of the people hit by that fireball an extra 5 points of damage. The other really cool option is if you have a spell shape feat like Widen Spell, Reach Spell, or Quickened Casting, you can apply it to the ally's spell, provided you could still use it yourself. For example, Quickened Casting is once per day. If you haven't used your once per day yet, you could quicken your wizard's spell to reduce it by 1 action, letting them cast another spell that turn. Or even better, a cleric being able to 2-action heal blast, you quickened them yourself, and they could 2-action heal blast somebody else. Insane combo potential here. I love it. I don't think this was a feat in the original PF2. I love this. If it was, I'll leave this in here so I look like an idiot and put it up on screen, because you guys like it when I look stupid. Hex Focus. Now, whenever you take the refocus activity, you regain all of your focus points instead of just 1. It's pretty good. Now, instead of taking 30 minutes to gain 3 focus points, you get all 3 of them in 10. A lot easier to do more regularly. The Witch's Broom feat. During your daily preparations, you can anoint any broom or quarterstaff or really any long straight piece of wood into a witch's broomstick, giving it a 20-foot fly speed while you have at least one hand on it and can only be used by you. Additionally, if there is 20 bulk or more on the broom, it moves 10 feet slower and it cannot move with more than 30 bulk on it. You can also take the craft activity to turn a normal broom into the flying broomstick item, and if you anoint a current flying broomstick item as your witch's broom, it gains a 10-foot bonus to its speed. So as long as you craft it into a flying broom and then anoint it your witch's broom, it should be moving pretty quick. Additionally, this lets it be used by anyone, not just you. Reflect Spell, a direct upgrade to counter spell. If you successfully counter a spell, you can redirect the effects right back to the caster. Now, even if it's an area effect, it only affects the original caster, sort of as the magic flies back into them and sort of attacks them from the inside, which I love. They try to cast Fireball, you fizzle it, and they just go up in a personal gout of flames. Love it. Rites of Transfiguration. You learn how to cast the Cursed Metamorphosis spell, which does something. I'm on a time crunch, so it does this. There you go. You can do this even if Cursed Metamorphosis is not on your spell list, and at any time you can spend 10 minutes to replace any spell slot of 6th rank or higher with Cursed Metamorphosis equal to the rank of the spell slot you chose. Patron's Presence allows your familiar to become an anti-spellcaster just bomb. For 2 actions once per hour, your familiar emanates a 15-foot aura. Any creature within that aura must make a will save against your spell DC or become stupefied 2 on a failure, stupefied 3 on a critical failure. This aura can be sustained up to 1 minute, and any creature who starts their turn in the aura or enters the aura at any time must make the saving throw against this effect. And there's no immunity. If they make their saving throw on the first turn, then cool, your turn comes back around, your familiar walks away, and then walks back up to them, boom, they're making the saving throw again. Effortless Concentration. When your turn begins, you can sustain a witch spell as a free action. Combine this with Cackle, and the witch can have the most spells going and sustained at once of any class in the game. Theoretically, at least 3, if not 4 spells can be consecutively sustained at the same time. Siphon Power. As a free action once per day, you can cast a spell that you have already cast that day without spending a spell slot up to a maximum of 1 rank lower than your highest rank. So you're level 16, you've got 8th rank spells, you can cast a 7th rank Magic Missile, and then the next turn, free action, cast it again, or at any time later in the day. Though do keep in mind that this is a free action that only works for the turn you activate it, and this free action has to be the first thing you do on your turn. If you somehow free action to Siphon Power and then get restrained somehow or cannot cast spells, you do still lose your Siphon Power even if you don't cast the spell that turn. Level 18's Split Hex is freaking awesome. For one action spell shape, if your next action is to cast a harmful hex, you can reduce its spell rank by 2 and have it affect 2 targets instead of 1. The only downside is it only works on harmful hex, so if you have any kind of buffing hex that affect your allies, you can't split them amongst allies, unfortunately, but that would be rad. Patron's Claim is absolutely horrifying. It's a new ability for your familiar to use. For 2 actions, your familiar's mouth opens into a massive, wide, gaping maw as some physical manifestation of your patron reaches out, grips a creature, and drains it of its essence to give you more spellcasting potential. This deals 10d10 spirit damage on a basic saving throw, and becomes drained 2 if they fail their saving throw, drained 4 if they critically failed their saving throw, and gives you a focus point back up to your maximum. Gross. For clarity, it's a fortitude save against your spell DC. I was just on a roll and didn't want to do another take. And witches have 3 different 20th level spells to round us off, starting with Hexmaster. This feels like it could have some really wacky implications and just completely nerf a boss fight into the ground. You are no longer limited to casting 1 hex per turn. If you've got the actions and the focus points, you can cast as many hexes as you want. Additionally, if you have the Cackle focus spell, that 1 free action Cackle auto-sustains all of your active hexes. Meaning you can hex this guy, that guy, his mother. Next turn, cackle all of them, hex that guy, this guy again, his mother, again. Next turn, cackle. That's 6 sustained hexes. That's stupid and I love it. Good luck keeping track of it all. Patron's Truth is a level 20 spell available to pretty much every spellcaster in the game. You get an extra 10th level spell slot. That's really good. It's just boring. And finally, Witch's Hut turns you into Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga? However you want to say it. Someone will get mad at me no matter what. You spend 1 day performing a ritual on a small house, turning it into an animated creature. It uses your statistics for almost everything, has 150 hit points and 10 hardness. Did I mention that this thing can be up to huge sized? Now the hut cannot attack, it cannot make skill checks, and any command you give it takes 1 full round for it to take effect. But here are the listed commands you can give your hut. The hut looks around in 120 feet and uses your perception modifier, and if it sees any creatures, it screams. Ah. If you command the hut to hide, it becomes a mundane item of its type, whether that's a tiny wagon or a 5-star hotel, and this counts as a 10th rank illusion effect to disbelieve and dispel. If you command it to leap, it casts a 10th rank teleport spell, carrying all creatures within it to its destination. I believe 10th level teleport is planar, by the way, so you just got a group planar teleport. When you command it to lock, it seals itself as if by the lock spell, and if given this command again, will unlock itself. And you can command it to move, which again can't really be used in combat, as it is a 1-round delay and cannot be controlled in any precise way. You can tell it to follow me, go over there somewhere, but you can't tell it walk to this square because it is a giant lumbering oaf of a house with legs. You can obviously only have 1 of these huts at a time, and if you make a new one, the original one just becomes a mundane item of its type. But the really sad but cute part is if you, the witch, ever die, your enchanted hut continues doing the last command you gave it indefinitely, which means GMs, you now have the opportunity to have the party find an abandoned witch's hut where the level 20 witch has died, and they can adopt the hut as a new pet and maybe slowly unlock its features during the campaign, and they can have a pet house. I'm gonna do that in my next campaign. Jake, if you're watching this, you didn't hear that. And there it is. The Witch for the Pathfinder 2e Remaster. God, the feats this time around are so cool. There's so much more flavor, so much more character, so much more identity, which is what the Witch was so drastically missing in the original interpretation. Y'all in the comments, you have to agree, this Witch feels leagues above more interesting, more flavorful, much more like a witch than the original iteration. Paizo, you done good. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out at all, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more, and leave a comment talking about whatever, your favorite feat. Are you going to be playing a witch soon? I want to hear about it. I love it. This video ended up being way longer than I expected because of those damn lessons, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm glad it's finally coming out. So, I'll see y'all soon for the Wizard Deep Dive. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, no nat ones. God, I love this new setup. I can just walk away.